More than I need, what you want, girl, it's yours. Give me your feelings, I just can't ignore. 'Cause all I want is you, baby. Give me your time, all your love, I've been paid.
What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Russell the Fourth.
Hey everybody, it's me, Brandy.
And welcome to another, but also very special episode of the What They Never Told Us podcast. What's going on? We are back, and I'm excited today.
Super excited because we have a guest in the building. You know, this is not very often that we have guests on here, but this season we're trying to expand and collaborate, and a very, very, very special person reached out to us, and we are so excited to have her here today.
Absolutely. And you know, since guests are rare, you should also be aware that when we do have guests, you should just assume that they're just amazing. Okay. And today we have with us, all the way from the West Coast, author of To Be Aligned, Getting Clear on Your Highest Purpose. She is the creator and host of the Liberate Your Orgasm podcast, featured on the Today Show. Listen here, we are just extremely blessed. I don't know how this happened, but God is good.
Yes,
we have Veronica Lynn Clark.
Everybody, woo.
You get air horns.
Russell the sound guy.
You did a great job. Russell the sound guy is amazing. You know what? It's really an honor and a privilege to be here with both of you. And I feel like it was serendipitous that I even came across you both.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just as much of a blessing for me. I'm grateful that we get to share this conversation with the audience. And I'm really excited to dive into it because I think that we've got a lot to share.
Absolutely.
You know, especially when it comes to relationships and some of the things we've talked about that we're excited to share with everybody. So
absolutely. We're happy to have you. Listen, so for those guys who are listening, it is the Tuesday after Father's Day. So big shout out to all of the fathers who are listening, who are a part of our community. We want to celebrate you.
Absolutely,
and for those of you guys who are doing the sometimes difficult but almost always rewarding job of being a father, we celebrate you and we honor you today. So happy Father's Day. Second of all, this is interesting because in our creative meeting, we kind of touched on a subject that you're passionate about, and we're going to go there. But I'm just curious to know, like, what kind of pulled you into this space, right? There's a lot of things you can have a podcast about. There's a lot of things you can kind of frame a career around. What is it about the space of relationships that kind of pulled you into this direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. We learn through relationships.
That's good.
I have had so many different relationships in my life. And one of the primary relationships after, of course, growing up was my marriage and raising children. And there's an initiation through the marriage process, becoming married and going through the relationship. It's an initiation. And sometimes we don't realize that at the time because we're just sometimes just trying to figure out how to do the relationship as best as we can based on what we've seen.
Absolutely.
And I learned a lot from messing up a lot. I didn't know I was messing up.
Story of our lives.
Right? I'm just saying, like, I was like, when I look back at young Veronica, married in her 20s, I'm like, I have so much compassion. And also like, girl, you didn't know any better. Nobody taught you any better. You know? And then we brought, 5 beautiful children into this world through the relationship. And that was a whole other initiation. And I didn't always get it right. Mm-hmm. And I'm still trying to figure out how to get it right as they continue to move through the different ages and the different stages. So why did I get into this? Well, first, you could have never, ever, 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 ever told me that I would be a sex and intimacy coach. Mm. I was as conservative as they come. And by the way, you may not realize this. Many people don't know this, but I actually went through, can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I went through ministry training school for about a year. Oh, wow. And I was 21 when I did that. And I was like, I think this is my calling. And I just didn't know at that time like how I was going to be later used. And it's through my experiences, like through all of my tests that were so hard that I was like, okay, I had the courage to pick up all the pieces. And that has become my body of work and my message. And in many ways, my ministry today.
That's so good, because that is literally the foundation of what they never told us. Russell and I sat down, and when he was like, you want to do a podcast? I'm like, who wants to hear from us? Like, we are not experts by any means. And he really was like, you know what? That's the good part, that we're not experts. We're not well schooled, but what we are is we're experts at life, right? We've gone through so many experiences that qualify us to talk about these specific areas, and the areas that we don't know too much about, we're opening it up for others to come in and say, hey, you know what? You might not be right about that. Let me tell you my experience. And I think that the reward from sharing and being vulnerable with others is just seeing how our experiences are helping others change their lives. It's such a huge blessing for someone to come to us and be like, you know what, when you said that, that really resonated with me. And because of that, now I can be better in my relationship.
Yeah. It's like, it's crazy because I can't remember what episode it was, and I'm not even going to try to like hurt myself by trying to recall the episode, but it's so funny to me how oftentimes the area of our greatest pain prepares us. It's also our area of our greatest preparation, right? Where he will utilize that area of pain and prepare you for purpose, you know, like that. When you were just telling your story, I'm like, wow, like that. I'm just seeing the things I went through, right? I didn't go to school for this. Like, no, I didn't go through aside from my own marital counseling from, you know, our divorce you know, like that is so amazing to me. How you look back and be like, I get it now. I get it now. I get why I had to go through that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's the wisdom. That's the wisdom. And you don't know it at the time because you're going through it. That's why I think that once you do grow through some really difficult times, if you can remember that and put it in the kind of that memory bank as, okay, that was hard, but I made it through it. And this is what I learned from it. Then when you come upon another hard time, and inevitably you will, because through the rest of our life, we're going to have challenges that come from, it seems out of nowhere, that we're not prepared for, that we don't expect. And as long as you can remember, I went through that hard thing, I survived, I got better, I uncovered different strengths and different skills about myself that I didn't even know, I can trust I'm going to make it through this storm too.
Yeah.
And you know what? Time and time again, that is what has helped me to continuously grow and climb the mountain. In 2008, that was like the beginning of, you know, that was the housing crash. And for me, it was like the perfect storm. It was like the housing crash. I had properties, I was married, and my kids. And then suddenly I found myself getting ready to go through a divorce, on the brink of a major bankruptcy. I didn't even know who I was anymore. Like my identity felt so like was all wrapped up in all the things I had and all the things I thought I was supposed to be, this perfect marriage and this perfect, all of these things. And I went through that and I grew through that. And so then when other hard things came, it took a while, but I was like, man, I'm stronger and better than ever. I'm stronger and better than ever.
That's my whole testimony, right? I know the significance of attaching yourself to your role in someone else's life. And then when that role is no longer there or the relationship changes, they're gone and they're growing and they're doing their own thing. And you're left to be like, what did I do with the past 10 years of my life? who is this person sitting there looking at me? And I remember when Russell and I got back together, it was like I had forged through the storm and I had come out this victorious woman and I wasn't going to change for anybody. And here this man was, and I was like, oh my God, if I want to be with him, I have to change.
Yeah.
And it was almost like that previous season was like, okay, how do you change to adapt to this relationship without losing who you are? And for me, that has been the biggest test and trial in our relationship, is really trying to be the soft, supple woman that he needs, but also remember that I'm like a fierce, independent woman and I can do anything but alone, but I get the opportunity and the pleasure to do it with someone else.
Brandy, that's a mic drop. Because you get to, that's so beautiful. And I think that's the thing. Yes, you are strong enough. And yes, you had to armor up and you had to be your own man in many different situations in your life. Mm-hmm. And so you were able to do that. But then we have masculine attributes in us. We can and we get to stand up and take care of ourselves. And when we come into a relationship and we come into partnership, we realize I can put the arms down. I don't have to carry that with me all the time. I get to be in my feminine. I get to be caring and nurturing, and I get to be protected and provided for through this man who I have been blessed to walk this path with. And now we don't have to fight. One of my biggest regrets, I would say, in my marriage is that I was unconsciously in competition with my husband. And you know what? It took me so long. It took me so long to realize that. And I'm telling you, like, I have so much compassion for myself. I have a lot of compassion even for my ex-husband. Now, he was not perfect by any means. Mm-hmm. We are all human. Mm-hmm. But when I realized that, I was like, I was in competition with this man. And that's because I thought I still had to be the man. So when women don't know how, when they have not sourced a sense of safety within themselves and they're looking outward, like, am I safe? Is it okay? Is it okay? Like, the fight is always there, right? In the unseen, like they're always still fighting. Wow. I was still fighting. And then all of a sudden, when there was my husband was the one I was fighting. And he didn't even know he was in battle with me until it was just like, woman, like, what's happening? Wow. Again, I don't mean to paint myself just as like the bad guy, but I like to take personal responsibility for my contribution to the relationship, because that's important. And the important thing for me now is to help women to see how we can emasculate the men in our lives in many different ways, and how when we are trying to be the man, the man can't be the man.
Wow.
I wanted to say one quick thing though too, just for the audience who's listening, because I know the way that we speak and the way that I speak for simplicity purposes, I'm really speaking from a heterosexual perspective. Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Okay, I want to just express that, and that this can apply in all kinds of different relationship dynamics.
Absolutely.
Just for the simplicity of our conversation, all the examples that I'll be using are, just related to heterosexual relationships.
Absolutely. Question. So this is a hot button issue, and for whatever reason, we see this so much as our audience grows, as we get to engage with more people. It seems like whatever we post, it could be a funny clip, it can be something that's lighthearted, a moment between us, or it could be something that we're working out in our personal relationship. Somehow, it always tends to be this display of tension between men and women. Mm-hmm. Somebody in the comment section, see, this is why women always, or women, see, this is why men, and it's like this tension that exists. Mm-hmm. For the sake of, because I feel like this conversation is so important, for the sake of just kind of like spelling this out, how does that kind of serve itself in a relationship? When you speak on like being in competition, right? I think there's a lot of people who can resonate with that, be like, man, I can kind of see that. Just to make it even more clearer, what are some examples of how in a relationship there can be hints of competitiveness between, a spouse?
This is crazy, but this is the first example that just came to my mind, and I remember it really clearly. Now, we were in our early 20s and still, building our credit and doing all the things, and I remember I got approved for a credit card that had like, I don't know, it was like $1,000 limit or something like that. And it was at a credit union, and, and then I got approved for this checking account and all these things. And I remember it was like my husband hadn't yet got approved for a credit card or something. So I was like, I had this energy of like, look what I'm doing. Look what I got. Like, I'm doing it. And I told him, I was like, I got approved, but I was kind of bragging in this way. And like I said, I can remember this so clearly because I remember how it felt that I was like one-upping him in some way. And it breaks my heart, to have to like acknowledge that, but that is the truth of it. And I like to be honest so that I can pick out those, that's poison in the garden. Those are weeds that will choke out the beauty. And it's little things like that, those little seemingly benign things that are really like daggers, little darts. Like, see, look, I'm better than you. Look, you can't do this. You can't do it as fast as me, as good as me. And that's jacked up.
You know what?
So
that definitely didn't make him fall more in love with me.
That's so good.
You know what? This is good because I feel like a lot of people aren't in tune enough to know that sometimes your spirit and the energy you give off can be felt, right? So, for instance, in this scenario, you getting a card might not be a detriment to him, but you can assess kind of in hindsight that, no, there was an energy behind my communication that, look what I got, creates a tension. And a lot of times people look at just all I did was let them know I got a card, unaware of, okay, if you know the spirit in which it's being delivered, maybe you can understand why it's an issue. For instance, our dynamic. When we first started now, mind you, we had already been married before when we reconnected, right? So I'm coming off of a failed marriage. She's coming off of a failed marriage. And we're coming into it hyper intentional. Like every conversation is borderline interviewish. Like I'm being dramatic.
It was therapy. It was therapy.
It was therapy. But we're also like asking the important questions. We're like, so how much do you make? Is it an issue for you if I make more than you? Right. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's not a problem for me. Right. Now coming in this dynamic, she didn't want to tell me how much she made on her job.
It was because it had always been an issue for me in relationships. I've always made more than the man that I was in relationship with. And inevitably there would be a way that it would be thrown in my face or that I would be made to feel less than because I was striving for achievement. I was looking for a certain fulfillment on my job. And because I did that, then I felt like I was being torn down in other areas. So making money, in a sense, more money than him, made me, in his eyes, I think, superior. I didn't feel that. But, now I can think maybe there were some subconscious things that I did that probably showed that.
So, and I was about to say that, like, I've never felt any ways about that. Like some people have really fragile egos, and it didn't bother me. But I can see if I felt insecure in my masculine in this dynamic, if I felt like there was a tug of war for who is the masculine energy, I can see how now you bring home the bigger paycheck is just another something that makes me feel insecure because of the tug of war, right? Now, the fact is, can't control how much she makes on her job, and however much is coming in is a benefit to everyone in the household, right? But if the spirit in which, if the spirit in which the information is delivered, it can change the whole dynamic.
Whole thing.
The whole thing. It's not just about the details. It's really about the posture of your heart.
Absolutely.
It's about your spirit. It's about your energy, right? You can look at the surface of the thing and say, all I said was this. All I did was this. Okay, let's go deeper. Let's go way below the surface. Let's not look at the tip of the glacier. Let's go all the way down. And you'll see that a lot of these issues that you can't really put the language behind is why is this a problem? Is because you have somebody in the dynamic who's not secure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
was powerful.
This is a heavy conversation.
It really is.
It is a heavy conversation. It's an honest conversation.
Yeah.
And it's a conversation that most people don't know how to have because they don't necessarily have the communication tools to feel secure, that like, I'm going to be okay after I say this, or can the relationship survive, or can I even look at myself honestly enough to say, ooh, that has been me. I have showed up in those ways.
Absolutely.
Most people just they're just not there yet. But hopefully the more that we have these kind of conversations, they will get there. That, to me, that's what the whole purpose is, because if we change ourselves individually, that makes our lives better. That makes the children, the people in our lives a little bit better because we are better. We're showing up, so we really get to become the light that we want to see in the world also. So I just always feel like personal responsibility is, let's look at how we're showing up, the things that we're saying, and it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable sometimes. It was super uncomfortable for me. I can speak easily about it now because I've done enough work around it. And I don't mind putting myself out there and saying, yeah, I did that too, because I don't ever want somebody to look at me and think that I think I have it all figured out when I don't.
Absolutely.
I have just had to learn through and grow through my experiences and choose to do something about it. But what you said was just so beautiful, and I had to write it down, and it is like the posture of your heart. I just love that.
It's real.
Because it is real. And the things that we're talking about, this is why they're also not easy to fix, is because there are things that you feel, but you don't necessarily see. Because just like you're right, that example that I gave you, it was relatively benign. Like, I'm going to use the credit card for us anyways, or what have you. It's going to help us to be able to buy more houses. It's going to help us. If I'm building my credit, then that's fantastic. But that wasn't it. And I think that's why it stayed with me all those years, was because I knew when I was saying it it was deeper than that. And so we have to pay attention to the energy in which we say things to our partners. And this is why, a lot of times, like, people sleep right next to each other, but they're miles and miles apart. And they want to be intimate, and they want to be able to do this. They want to be able to get together. They want to be able to make love. They want to be able to kiss. They want to be able to touch. But they can't, because it feels like there is something that's between them, and that is those invisible barriers that keep people from really being able to genuinely and authentically connect. And those walls are created through this kind of energy that I just gave an example of. So, and those are also the things that keep us in these, like, that keep women sometimes in their masculine and in their shell, and keep them from really being able to open up and to be receptive and to be soft, which really is our natural state when we're in our feminine. It is to be receptive. It is to be flowing. We are to bless our husbands or our partners with our beauty, with our grace, with our softness. And he, in turn, when he is blessed in that way, he gets to really be elevated into an even higher state in his masculine, which I believe is that's his natural state, is to be the provider in whichever ways, provider of love, provider of, however, provision is it's all different depending on the relationship and so forth. But and the protector. And so he gets to get, like, ignited and elevated, and he gets to be that strong mountain that he is designed to be. But if people are at odds in the relationship, it's like nobody can really flourish and become like the individuals that they are designed to be, let alone be the lovers or the partners for each other that is possible, if they were able to dissolve some of those issues.
Russell and I were talking the other day, and we were talking about, in a sense, generational wealth, right? Things that have been passed down from generation to generation, but especially in the Black community, how those things are missing, right? We're not passing down wealth. We're also not passing down examples of healthy marriages. We're not passing down wisdom. We're not passing down anything that will benefit the generation that comes after us and even serve forth 4 and 5 times removed. And one of the things that I definitely feel is missing is that true example of what a family looks like, what husband and wife looks like. I told him that I just had one example of marriage growing up, which were my grandparents. What I saw was not dysfunctional, but as I got older, learned about the dysfunction that was there. And so in a turn, what it created was me innately, I felt like I want to be protected. I want to be provided for. I want to feel safe, but I don't know how to do any of that. I don't know how to allow someone to protect me. I don't know how to allow someone to make me feel safe or to provide for me, because all I've seen is women in that role.
And I was about to say, like, there's a dynamic here where society kind of like influences how we react to this traditional or more natural state of masculine and feminine, and how they collaborate with one another, right? Like, for instance, there's this show that we watch on Prime Video. It's called Power, right? And it's this shift where all of a sudden women across the globe are developing these supernatural powers where they can manipulate and control electricity, right? So now there's this huge power shift where men who are naturally stronger, right? They're the one that open up the jar that you can't open and reach the shelf that most women can't reach, but now women are the more dominant gender, and there's these men who are just like falling to pieces because they can no longer be that, right? And there's this, even me watching the show, there's like this like almost satisfaction with seeing the woman like, would you say to me, talking to this big burly 7-foot man with like zapping him, would you say? And it's kind of like that, right? Where there have been so many men who have weaponized masculinity, who were not good leaders or didn't have good character, and because of that, their masculinity was abused, whether that was physically, that was emotionally, whether that's in society where women had to fight for just rights as humans because they were the supposed weaker,
sex.
Weaker sex. And now, as we see society shift, right? And women are more empowered, and women are now more educated and are more higher paid in most careers, right? Now it's like, oh no, it's a new day.
And it's hard to turn that switch off when you come home. When you're when you're a boss out there in the boardroom and everyone's listening to you and waiting on you to make a decision, and then you come home and you have to switch that off. That's the struggle, because I never saw a woman switch it off. It was that outside, and it was that when she came in the house. And it's been, I think we're gotten a lot better at it now, but it's always been that little thing between us. It's like, I don't like the way you said that.
And it's like, even if I want to be in my feminine, I've seen it go wrong so much.
Yeah.
Do I trust you to be in my feminine?
Am I safe enough to do that?
Am I safe enough to do that? Yeah.
See, and what you just said too is a really important thing, because sometimes women, we don't stop to consider, does he feel safe in my presence?
That's so
and
true.
Safety not in like, I'm going to beat you up or something like that, but do I feel safe that you can even hold space for my emotions or me just to have a hard day and to not have it all together all the time. And, so there's like, or women can create a lack of safety in the ways that we may punish men by withholding sex or, withholding love, withholding affection. It's like, well, you didn't do this, so now I'm going to roll my eyes at you and I'm not going to speak with you, for the next few days. I'm just going to give you the silent treatment. That creates a lack of trust and a lack of safety in the relationship for both. So it's like an unconscious kind of a way where women can try to get the power back to feel better about themselves, for that moment, but then, are upset too if they are not having the affection and the connection that they really deeply desire for the man. But that's because there is this like, well, shoot, I can't come to you. I don't even trust I can come to you because if I do one thing wrong, I'm getting punished, by not getting sex or by getting connection and things like that. And then a lot of times that's when, infidelity starts to creep into the picture, and it can start emotionally at first. Usually it does start emotionally before it starts to even get into the physical, but because we all need love, affection, attention, connection. And so, we're all playing a part in that. And so it's important for us to realize, okay, if I'm not creating safety for my man in the ways that I can as the woman, well then who is? Because somebody will step in, to do that if he is weak enough, right? If he doesn't know what to do with his need.
Sometimes it's
and
if he's hungry.
How to communicate. He doesn't know how to communicate, right?
Sometimes like if he's hungry enough or if he's starved enough, right? We've
Exactly.
withheld this element from you for so long, and that it's a need for you. So now you feel starved for that. And sometimes when you're starved for that, you get desperate. And when you get desperate, you do things that maybe are outside of your character or outside of maybe even your will. Like, I don't want to do this, but I know that I need this. And my source of that is either void of it, withholding it, or just nonchalantly just like, whatever, you don't need that. And it's not just men, it's women too. But I think oftentimes the men get the brunt of that cheating, label. And we think that it's just all about sex, but we don't see how our manipulation of that, our lack of affection, our lack of attention to their needs can sometimes push them in that direction. Because what is the to a desperate man, bitter meat?
To a hungry man, bitter meat tastes sweet.
I know that's not what I want to do, but I'm really desperate.
And the truth is, there's so many men who they misinterpret their needs, right? Because most men are not that versed on their emotional needs. They water it down to a sexual impulse, right? So for most men who might not recognize, I need affection, right? And most men do have a high sex drive, and I think two things can both be true, right? It's not either or; it could be both be the same. There could be a man who has a high sex drive. That doesn't mean his need for affection and affirmation is canceled out. No, they're both, right? And sometimes when you're so sexualized or hyper focused on sex, you'll kind of jumble the two together, right? Yeah, you might not like to hold hands, and maybe you're not the type of guy who likes to skip and hold hands and, kissy face in the movie theater, but you're still a human being. You still have a need for affection, right? So a lot of times when a man can't express that, but he's comfortable expressing, man, we ain't had sex 3 days, or, man, we haven't, man, when the last time we, sometimes it's easier to dismiss that because it's like, God, is that all you care about? Like romance me, make me want to have sex. And I think that's that's equally important as well, right? Like
it's super important.
It's super important. But a man has to be, and like a man has to be invested in his emotional intelligence enough to evaluate, like, okay, I really just need to be held. I need to be seen. I need for my woman to look at me as a man and make me feel something. Most men settle for just getting that as sex. You know what I mean? A man in the sexual realm, it's like, it's a great feeling. It's like I conquered. Like, I've done
But
this.
it's and it can feel great in that moment, but then afterwards, that deeper need can still remain.
It's still there.
It's still there. So like, there's so many juicy things that we are hitting on that I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many different directions that we can go in.
Yeah.
You know, and so a couple of things that I just wanted to share was we touched on how men also need to be able to create enough safety for the women, like, because there's a reason why the woman shuts down. Okay,
Absolutely.
right? There's a reason why. So I want to just go to myself again for just a moment so I can give a little bit more background for like why I'm talking about what I'm talking about. So when I grew up in a really abusive home, sexually, emotionally abusive, physically abusive, every single kind of abuse that you can imagine. I experienced and was witness to. Okay. So that was like from the very beginning up until teenage years. So also like in my marriage, I did experience domestic violence. So while I'm talking about my part in it, because I study human relationships, right? My degrees is in psychology, and I study because I'm curious. This is how we learn and how we grow. And so the relationships that I have in my life are what I consider to be, it's a microcosm of the macro, like what else is out there, what else is happening, which also allows me to speak a lot more clearly and honestly to my clients and to the classes that I teach, because I'm like, I've had so many different experiences. I get this. And I can also see how men and women turn against each other. And I can see how the blame game can happen. And I can see how the pointing fingers and the not wanting to take responsibility and how we want to say, all of the things that it's the man's fault or it's the woman's fault. It's everybody's fault. Everybody plays a role in it. And even though it was not okay under any circumstances for my husband to ever put his hands on me, I also know my role in that, in the ways that I might have instigated, and the ways that I did all kinds of things. And I'm not taking responsibility for the things that ultimately happened. I'm just saying I had a part in it. And so when we look at that from the very beginning, we spoke a moment ago about, where did this even begin? Where did this whole thing about men versus women start? Well, I mean, this is like years and years and years in the making, right? Years. We don't know. It doesn't even matter really to try to pinpoint where it all started. What matters is that we have to start changing things now so that we can have better and more joyful and meaningful relationships. And so we can change legacy so our children get to see what healthy relationships look like, so we can be fulfilled in our life. And so also so that the whole focus of our day to day isn't on the relationship, right? It's like a difference of like, am I working in the business or am I working on the business? Like, am I like just being able to really enjoy life and have this really healthy functioning relationship, or am I constantly like, in the trauma of it? Yeah. So there's a couple quick things that I just want to share, and that could be helpful for an audience who's listening. And I want to bring sex into it for a moment, okay? Because, Russell, you pointed out, like, yes, maybe men have a really high sexual drive and so forth, and so perhaps and so do women, right? But like, one thing is that I know that's one way that men connect and get intimacy, whereas women, we may have more forms of intimacy. I'm super intimate with my girlfriends, and we share, energy in all kinds of different ways. We hug, we hug family members, we hug our children, and sometimes men, they don't always have that. So sex can be a primary way in which they get the affection and the connection that they need, even though they may not label it as that and may not even be aware that that is what they need. Okay. So one tip, and people who are listening, just, try this out. I always suggest to couples to create a little space. You can create the space in your living room when the kids aren't home, or in your bedroom, but put down a little blanket And, like, this is the space that we are going to just spend 10, 15 minutes and be with each other with, the intention of really connecting and seeing each other, like, with new eyes, not seeing each other for who I think you are and who you have been for the past 10 years, but like, you're a brand new person every day. Let me see the soul in you. Let me see the God force in you. And then to maybe take your clothes off and just to be naked with each other without the intention of having sex, but just to be able to even just put your bodies together and just hold one another. And I would say very, very few words, just connecting, maybe gentle massage, but not sexual massage, more of a just like a restorative kind of touch. That can be so helpful for couples who they don't know exactly what the relationship issues are, but they know there's something and they want to come back together again. They want to be closer than they ever have been before. You can start through this just intimate connection of just putting your bodies together without the intention to have sex.
I think that's so good, because through this platform, what we get in our inbox or under certain posts is, here we are. How do we get to the next step? So I think people are recognizing in their relationships that something's missing. And sometimes it helps to just have an example, which you think, okay, Brandy and Russell are that, which we have our issues too. But, so how do I get there? And what we say is, it's different for every relationship. We are not in your relationship, so we can't tell you exactly what to do to get there. But I think establishing a connection, because usually those issues start to come once that connection is lost. We felt all the things in the beginning, but then life started lifing, right? And now I can't look at him without thinking about how he didn't pay the bill, how he forgot to take out the trash, how when I walked by and really wanted to touch, he didn't touch me. And all those things break that connection. That is a great way to just sit down and in the moment reestablish the connection between you and your spouse. And if things lead to sex, then great. That means you're making a step forward. But sometimes I just need to be seen. And I think that you can look at me, but you don't really see me. And you see, or you see all the ways in which I benefit you or which I benefit the family, but you don't see me as a person, as a woman. And that connection activity that you just said, I think is something even we could benefit from, because in everyday life, those things get lost. And now I don't see you as the person that I once fell in love with. You're my wife, you're my helper, you're this, you're that, but you're not that same person that drew me in and attracted me in the beginning.
Well, because people start to see each other as the comfortable couch that isn't going anywhere.
Yes.
Like, there's a couch. I love the couch. The couch is comfortable. I need the couch. Couch meets my needs. But then if we just expect it to be there, then we stop nurturing the relationship the way that we did in the beginning when we wanted it, And so this is, and I specifically said, like, not even having sex, because sometimes, like, there's these unspoken needs, or there's so many unspoken things that the body actually holds. And so when there have been emotional trespasses, there has been just the things that go on in relationships that, like, just hold me. And, this can, if you don't have sex, this can actually help you to increase more turn on, because it's like, listen, we kind of have this little boundary. We're not going to have sex right here, because things always lead to, things lead to sex. And right now we're just nurturing the relationship in this way. Right now, I'm just holding you. You are holding me. I might be really turned on right now, but we are going to work on our friendship and our connection, so we can trust each other again, so we can believe in each other again, so that we can start and say, you know what? Yes, this relationship is worth worth my time and my energy and my attention. And I really want this to work. And I am committing to our friendship again so that we can build from here. So it really helps to reestablish that trust.
Absolutely.
I want to give you a couple other quick things really quick. So this is good. Sex. Women, have sex with your man. And also, for those of you who don't realize, sex can really be very healing. Very, very healing. And I know for me, when I was upset, the last thing I wanted to do was have sex. I'm like, do not even look at me. Don't even try to smell in my direction. Like, do not even think about it. And that's why, so this takes some practice, but there's 4 different types of sex. The first kind of sex is procreation. Mm-hmm. We have sex because we want to procreate. We want to have children. Okay, so it's very intentional in that way. And then the other one, let's think of it like this kind of recreational sex. Mm-hmm. Sex to have fun, sex just to be playful, to be silly. This isn't like that deep making love. It's nothing like that. This is just, we're just having fun because it's fun and playful, and it's like this innocence in that eroticism. That can be really healthy and nurturing and nourishing for the relationship. Plus, it increases like flirtation and, the turn on between you both. It's like, ooh, I know, the bathroom, 5 minutes, so this is just kind of those like fun quickies, things like that, right? But being intentional about like, what do we need today? We need a little fun. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then the other one, the third one I would say is like that restorative sex. Sometimes we just need that more deep and more emotional kind of restorative, like I need your attention in this particular way. And you both agree to having that restorative sex that's going to help to bring more connection and healing and a salve that may be needed in the relationship. And then the last I'd like to say is like this, like sex magic. It's like this intentional kind of coming together, making love, having sex, and saying like, you know what, us enjoying each other right now is a blessing to ourselves and to our family, and we are enriching our life through our connection. And in this way, your sex can become a prayer that you are offering up and saying, I want our business to thrive. That we're coming together and we are praying with our bodies that, we get to close on that house and we get the best deal on this. And, I'm praying that, our health, that our health is better, or that, my mother's health is better, whatever that is. But it's like really coming together in a very intentional way to see something else come to pass that is going to bless your life. So those are 4 different approaches to sex.
That is you were it's completely appropriate. I'm not gonna say that. But while you were talking, I was like thinking of these real life experiences we've had. So for instance, there was a clip that we had where we were talking about our experience crying while being intimate. Right. Mm-hmm. One time we had an argument, and she had went to go sleep out on the couch. So we talked it out. Let's go back to bed. We ended up being intimate that night. And it was such an emotional experience, right? It was our first time experiencing what, most people just call makeup sex. Just makeup sex, right? But it was so healing. And it was such a reconnection. What was that one called that you called it? It was the restorative. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't know what it was called. I don't think I had the language to really describe it. People online were like, what? Like we're trying to describe what we experienced. People were like, what are you talking about? But I think most people have watered down what sex can be, and I think right now, of course, recreational is a thing, right? But it could be so much more than just recreational. You know what I mean? And not to say that recreation doesn't have its place in that. It's not intentional because it's a beautiful thing. But when you tap into the healing aspect of it, It's super powerful. I've had friends after the episode was like, bro, you cried? I was like, listen, I know, bro. Listen to me. I couldn't even tell you where it came from. You know what I mean? But it's like, it's a really powerful thing. And the last one that you said, would you call it sex magic?
Sex magic. Mm-hmm.
That is so powerful. There's a scripture, and I don't want to butcher it, but just to paraphrase it, but it says, sex between husband and wife is as worship,
unto the Lord.
As worship unto the Lord. And I remember when I was young in ministry and I was talking to a friend, we were laughing like, man, what? He was about to get married. He was like, man, we about to go worship. We were kind of joking about it. But it's such a beautiful thing when a husband and wife are intimate. Like, it really brings glory to God in a very special way. And the closer you are with your spouse, it's such a beautiful thing, not just for you guys, but for everyone who's connected to you. Like you were saying, for your children, for your community, everybody that you come in contact with. When you are reestablishing your connection and coming together intentionally in a beautiful way, it trickles down in so many different areas of your life.
Yeah, that's so good. I when I was just listening, I was doing the same thing. I was like, okay, so that was recreational for sure.
Well,
okay, that right there, that was restorative. I was literally going through, but yeah. I think, like Russell said, sex has been so watered down in our society that it's just one type. And even in my previous relationships and marriages, I was so afraid of what I call the sex Band-Aid. Problems are existing, but we may have a little tension during the day, but then we have sex and we wake up and pretend like nothing ever happened. And I was so afraid of that happening in our relationship that sometimes I was like, I don't want to have sex right now because I'm afraid that this is masking what's really going on. But now I can see how, it's just restoration in our case. In some cases it is just a Band-Aid, but in our case, it truly is restoration. And we shouldn't withhold in those instances where we feel like we've, drug out this situation. We've come to some type of agreement, but we're still really not, I haven't forgiven you all the way. That was a great way for me to just let it all go and really reestablish why I'm with him. And it is because we can make it through those really hard things and still be us.
Yeah. Those 4 examples of sex that I just gave, it takes conscious people to be able to start to discern, like, what do we need right now? But before we even get to that point, we also have to be able to have agreements in the way that we communicate with one another. You're right, because otherwise now we can just use sex as a way to put a Band-Aid over things, and then nothing's really actually getting resolved.
Yeah.
And so it is so, before we even get to that point, first of all, I'm sharing that because I really want people to get that sex really can be healing. Because I'll tell you, when I got married, I was like, I hated sex. I didn't want to. It felt like it was a chore. It felt like it was like I had to do it. And so if he didn't want to do it, I was like, ooh, good. I'm off tonight. I get a break. I don't have to do it. And that sucks, because we really cheat ourselves out of the beauty of how nourishing, how fulfilling, how joyful sex can be when we are consciously engaging in that energy exchange. Okay, I like to think of it as sex stands for sacred, S, energy, E, X, exchange. It's an exchange of energy. So I think couples also, this is why the first practice that I shared is really important, is like, because when you start to spend time with just your body without words, your body starts to melt, and the emotions that were held inside the tension and the tissues, they start to release. And people are oftentimes surprised at how they feel when they're with their partner, who they may be with for like 20 years, or however long. And they're like, I haven't felt like this in like years with my partner, And I oftentimes, I have these containers all the time where I teach these couples certain classes within like 15 minutes, and they're in this practice and they're like, how did that just happen? But it's because because if you just really allow yourself to be present with your partner and you trust the process, as uncomfortable as it can be, something else starts to reveal itself. And those are oftentimes the issues that actually need to be discussed, because then we can be more in our vulnerable self. Even the man, both can be more vulnerable and be able to share, okay, this is how I'm feeling right now. And then that's when real transformation can start to happen in the relationship. Yeah. Because now it's like, I trust you. I'm trusting what I feel more than I'm trusting just what you're saying. And we can start to, build from that. Now, both people in the relationship have to be committed to whatever it was that you agreed on to elevate the relationship.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, there's so many different things to that. And this is such a high level overview, right?
Yeah.
And like, every single relationship is very different and nuanced, but I think one of my missions is, I love love. I love families. We need to be able to heal and restore families. And, it begins with the parents. It begins with the relationship, whether people are married or they're in relationship long term. Like, it's important for us to have tools so that we can communicate and we can love each other, because when we are loved, then we do things out of love. Then we live better. We're better humans,
Absolutely.
We're going to interact with other people with more love and more compassion and more care. And I believe that that's really what will change our world, but it begins with us. And so, like, it's a gift for me to be able to work with couples. Mm-hmm. I just want to say one more thing really quick about this, and even how I even started. Like, I used to just work with women, and then I was working with women, and they would go to my retreats, and then they would come back home. Like, I'd have retreats in Costa Rica and different places, and they'd come back home, and the husbands were like, "What did you do with my wife? Like, she's not the same. Like, what is going on here? Like, this is not cool. What happened? And I was like, I got to work with both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been a game changer in my life. I experienced so much joy. It's just like, oh my gosh, it just takes my breath away. I'm like, thank you, God, for helping. Like, thank you for leading me to my purpose. Thank you for all my trials and tribulations and all the reasons and all the breakdowns that were actually breakthroughs that I could not see and I did not understand. Thank you that it was so to get closer to my purpose. Yes. And now I get to live and do my purpose on purpose.
That's so good.
That's it.
So tell us about your purpose and what you do on a daily basis. So to anyone who's listening right now and says, you know what, I like her, I like what she's talking about, I'm in that place with my spouse and I want to get better. How can they reach you? How can they find out more about you? If this is your time to just talk about how people can get in touch with you, advertise and promote yourself.
Oh, I just love that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, you know what? I am a radical life strategist, right? Like, I help people to absolutely radically change their life. And I help people to be able to fall more in love with themselves and with their spouses, their partners. And so I also help people to really see the gold from their past.
That's so good.
That's important because it really helps people to find a lot more confidence in who they are. And so, in a nutshell, I help people to change their lives. But specifically, I work with women and couples, and I work with blocks that are in sexuality and in like touch, especially if there's been any kind of trauma or suppression, just because of religion or because of those teachings. You're not allowed to have sex, you're not allowed to touch, and you're not allowed to do some of those societal and religious conditioning can really create a lot of blocks in our sexual energy. So I help people to reconnect with their sexual energy and to be able to use that to revivify and restore their life and their relationships.
So how can they reach out to you? Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I gotta just talk about my book here.
I'll give you a hand clap too.
Yeah, and it's really cool because I talk a lot about purpose in here.
Okay.
And this book is a framework for redefining love, life, and relationships. So this is really a key book. I think is a great for anybody who is just ready to get started on transformational thinking and really starting to want to become more conscious about how they are approaching their life and their relationships. This is a really good book for doing that because I talk about values and purpose and habits and mindset. I mean, I've really laid it out in that book. So grab that book. You can get it on Amazon. You can find me. My website's probably going to be the best place, VeronicaLynnClark.com. And follow me on the gram at Veronica L. Clark.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Listen, Veronica, we cannot thank you enough. I feel like we have to bring you back at some point. I feel like we just kind of
scratch
the surface of so many deep conversations. And I know for a fact, and I'm believing that there's so many people who are listening who are like this. I feel like they have cameras set up in my household because I'm dealing with this right now. And that's our prayer. That's what we pray about before every episode. Meet the people where they're at. If there's hopefully there's something said that can resonate with our audience. I have no doubts. There's some episodes I'm like, I don't know. This is not one of them. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we appreciate your transparency, your vulnerability, and your expertise because I think that not a lot of people will bridge the gap between masculine, feminine energies and relationships, how that plays a part in sex and love and communication and development. So bringing all of that together to one place, especially, even here, we kind of piece those things apart, but really it's a whole,
it's all connected.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Yeah.
It's a conversation that can't happen in silos, right? It's something that you have to see in its totality in order to heal, reveal, and then deal with all of that. So I appreciate the work you do. I appreciate you being here more than you know. And I think if we could just bring her back specifically for an episode on how religion forms your idea on sex, something that we both have dealt with and something that we hear from our audience all the time. I was taught this, so then when I was free to do it, I was locked up and I couldn't understand how to move from what I was taught to being free in my relationship. It's a whole conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What They Never Told Us family, please, we are encouraging you to reach out. Follow Veronica L. Clark on Instagram. Go to the website. If you guys hit us up in our DMs about issues you have, we don't have all the answers, okay? She has answers, okay? this is who you need to get in touch with.
Definitely a resource.
Absolutely. So we're encouraging you guys to reach out to her. Of course, we'll be back on Wednesday for our Facebook and YouTube Live. Feel free to bring us any questions, any conversations around this. We can't wait to kick it with you. And we'll be back, okay? As always, like we tell our community, we love love.
And y'all should love too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.